Stop scrolling because the most powerful man in hip-hop just betrayed the tiniest, costliest crack in his legendary cool. Inside a packed Manhattan courtroom that felt more like a pressure cooker than a hall of justice, the air sharpened the instant Judge Alvarez uttered 4 simple words: Hailey Bieber will testify. Every reporter's pen froze, every spectator leaned forward, and even the court sketch artist paused mid-stroke. At the defense table, Sean Diddy Combs lowered his eyelids as if buying time, but the tremor in his hand sold him out. A crystal goblet quivered against polished oak before he set it down, untouched, like it might detonate. His lead attorney leaned in, whispering calculated calm, yet Diddy's gaze stayed glued to the double doors where Hailey would soon appear, jaw locked in a silent dare that couldn't hide the flicker of panic flashing behind his designer frames. Outside, word shot through social media at warp speed. Hailey Bomb trended within minutes, turning sidewalks into stampedes of paparazzi and fans hungry for a front row seat to history. In the space between a judge's syllables and a mogul's shudder, decades of whispered yacht party rumours leapt from tabloid lore to courtroom fact, and the empire built on beats, brands, and airtight NDAs suddenly felt one gasp away from collapse. Think you've heard every lurid detail big enough to crater a superstar's career? Think again, because Hailey's subpoena isn't just another headline. It's the pin yanked from a live grenade aimed squarely at the hearts of Hollywood's most impenetrable alliances. If she takes the stand and confirms that grainy yacht photo, showing a frightened 19-year-old corralled while Diddy's inner circle laughed over $1,000 champagne, prosecutors can reroute the entire case from vague misconduct to hard-hitting criminal conspiracy. That means civil settlements ripped open, sealed NDAs dragged into daylight, and a parade of A-list witnesses suddenly facing perjury traps of their own. For the music industry, the fallout is nuclear. Brands have pre-written morals clause exit clauses ready to trigger, streaming platforms whisper about quietly deprioritizing his catalogue, and collaborators are already scrubbing Instagram grids in frantic damage control. Even rival moguls are sweating. If the yacht's guest list leaks, forgotten favours and secret equity deals could surface in sworn testimony, turning private handshakes into prosecutable paper trails. Picture a domino line of luxury labels, tech investments, fashion houses, and festival owners, each collapsing as prosecutors stitch together a narrative sharp enough to sever careers overnight. That's why Diddy's famously cool demeanour cracked, because one woman's sworn memory now threatens to collapse $1 billion ecosystem built on beats, bravado, and the illusion that silence keeps everyone safe. It all began with a single, almost forgotten snapshot. The kind of blurred, low-light image that usually fades into a phone's camera roll and dies there. Instead, this one resurfaced like contraband treasure. Hailey in a silver slip dress on the teak deck of a mega yacht, half-smile frozen under swags of fairy lights. Beside her, a barely focused profile, sharp cheekbones, diamond studs, matched every tabloid contour of Sean Diddy Combs. In the distant background, a wide-eyed teenager appears mid-retreat, an arm blocking her path toward the gangway. The photo ricocheted through encrypted group chats months before prosecutors got it, but when it landed on their desk, long-buried NDA whispers solidified into exhibit talk. Why does a single frame matter? Because Diddy's team insists he wasn't even on that coast the night in question. Yet online sleuths dug up archived party shots from Ibiza and Miami proving his penchant for last-minute fly-ins, celebrity-stuffed decks, and no cameras rules that somehow always break. Meanwhile, leaked discovery files show prosecutors already comparing this grainy yacht image to recently unsealed evidence photos, champagne bottles, black badges, matching security lanyards, arguing it's the Rosetta Stone of a pattern that stretches from luxury marinas to locked hotel suites. One blurry JPG and suddenly the timeline isn't murky, it's mapped, timestamped and heading straight for open court. For 4 long years, Hailey Bieber perfected the art of curated serenity. Her Instagram grid was a pastel-lit carousel of Balearic sunsets, couples devotionals and puppy-eyed selfies, every post calibrated to mute the memory of that yacht night. Yet between those squares lay whole stretches of silence, the nights she jolted awake at 3 a.m. because a champagne cork in a neighbour's apartment sounded too much like a door latch on the upper deck, the mornings she closed her phone the moment trending topics hinted at Diddy, terrified the photo had leaked, Friends noticed how she flinched when an unfamiliar number lit her screen, or how she'd disappear from group chats each time a fresh celebrity scandal broke. Even Justin, usually shielded by his own stardom, watched her slip into longer pauses during interviews, ducking any question that drifted near industry after parties. Publicly, they masked the unease with matching streetwear drops and faith-filled captions, but insiders whispered about the chill that crept through their mansion whenever an envelope without a return address arrived. That facade finally splintered the moment a courthouse clerk confirmed her name on the witness list. Years of manicured quiet could no longer outrun a single subpoena. The silence that once served as armor suddenly felt like evidence, and every carefully filtered post turned into a receipt of what she chose not to say. Until now. The knock shattered dawn's quiet at precisely 7:12 a.m, echoing through the Bieber mansion like a starter pistol. Hailey lingered at the kitchen island, staring into a mug of coffee she'd reheated twice but never sipped, when a suited stranger appeared behind the frosted glass of the front door. He handed her a thick envelope and muttered the 4 words that empty every room of air, "You've been served, Mom," before vanishing down the drive. Hailey's pulse roared in her ears as she broke the seal. The subpoena's stamped crest felt heavier than gold. Upstairs, Justin's voice drifted through the rafters, mid-call, mid-panic, then cut off the second he saw the papers trembling in her grip. He took them, scanned once, and colour drained from his face like stage lights snapping off. Time stalled between them. No sobbing, no shouting, just 2 heartbeats sinking under the weight of a decision that could raise their carefully gated life. Justin whispered that she didn't have to do it, that she shouldn't torch herself for someone else's sins, but his words floated, futile, against the inevitability in her eyes. Before either could speak again, Hailey climbed the stairs to their bedroom, retrieved an old journal, and reread the single shaky line from that yacht night. Something felt wrong. I shouldn't have stayed. Realising the moment to stay silent had expired the instant the doorbell rang. The courtroom felt smaller once Hailey took the stand, as if every panelled wall leaned in to hear her heartbeat. The prosecutor began gently, verifying her identity in the yacht photo, confirming the frightened girl she'd tried to help. But the softness only sharpened what came next. When Hailey described a man blocking the exit and whispering, "You didn't see anything," a chill rippled through the gallery. Jurors leaned forward, pens hovering mid-air. Then Diddy's attorney rose, silk-voiced and circling like a shark. He called her memory a haze of champagne and gossip, suggested the deck lights could warp faces, implied that, as an influencer trained to edit reality, she might be editing this one too. Hailey didn't flinch. "A filter can't erase fear," she replied, letting the words land with surgical precision. The lawyer pivoted, waving a stack of social media printouts to paint her as fame-hungry. She countered by reading a single journal line. "Something felt wrong, I shouldn't have stayed," written years before the hashtag era, and the room went silent enough to hear Diddy's knuckles crack. Jurors exchanged glances. The defence's polish suddenly looked like polish on a coffin. When cross-examination ended, even the court reporter exhaled audibly, realising the clash hadn't merely tested Hailey's credibility, it had etched it in stone, while the mogul's mythos chipped away like varnish under a hot light. 2 hours after court recessed, while cable news still replayed Hailey's cross-examination on a loop, a plain manila envelope slid across the prosecution's conference room table and detonated the narrative. No return address, just a post-it, read before tomorrow. Inside lay thick cream stationery, black ink slanting in unmistakable handwriting, Justin Bieber. The letter pulsed with raw confession. He had boarded the yacht for less than 10 minutes, long enough to see Hailey cornered by a badge-wearing handler, and to hear a panicked girl plead, "Please don't take me upstairs." He admitted fleeing, "I was scared and I left you there," and begged his wife not to shoulder the fallout alone. But the clincher came in 6 words that undercut every timeline Diddy's defense had floated. "I saw what you saw, Hales." Prosecutors read it twice, then a third time, realising the letter wasn't simply marital anguish. It was corroboration from a global megastar who had, until now, been safely off stage. By dawn, the leak had hit social media, #Justin New, #Eclipse trending, #HaileyBomb, and courthouse barricades doubled as reporters screamed for comment. Inside Diddy's camp, panic metastasized into fury. The team drafted emergency motions, muttering about unauthenticated correspondence, while the mogul paced like a caged panther, finally understanding that evidence isn't always an exhibit. Sometimes it's a love letter that catches fire and lights the trial from the inside out. Within 24 hours, the music industry's golden staircase turned into an avalanche under Diddy's feet. Dior executives huddled in emergency conference calls and quietly flipped the pause switch on a fragrance campaign that was supposed to launch next week. Ciroc's social feeds, once wall-to-wall with his grin beside frosted bottles, went conspicuously dark. Spotify insiders leaked that his entire catalogue had been yanked from 3 flagship playlists before sunrise, while festival bookers whispered about morals clauses louder than they discussed headliner fees. In boardrooms from Beverly Hills to Berlin, lawyers combed endorsement contracts for escape hatches, and venture capital partners scrubbed his name off pitch decks as though deleting a typo. But the commercial quake was only the surface shock. Inside the mogul's own citadel, fissures spread faster. A longtime security chief resigned for family reasons. A studio engineer deleted every trace of his previous employer from LinkedIn. And a stylist who once flaunted VIP yacht selfies set her Instagram to private and DM'd prosecutors that she was ready to talk. Even rivals who once feared retaliation began testing the air, sensing the lion's roar had turned into uncertain pacing. Meanwhile, TMZ cameras caught former House staff slipping into a Midtown law office, and Reddit lit up with unverified but chilling anecdotes that echoed Hailey's testimony line for line. By sunset, the empire that spent decades buying silence found itself drowning in a chorus of liberated voices, and the louder they grew, the smaller Diddy looked against the widening crater of his own legend. After the legal thunderclaps, New York's skyline felt eerily hushed, like the city was holding its breath while scrolling for the next alert. At dawn, Hailey and Justin slipped through a private terminal, no entourage, no statement pieces, just plain hoodies and fingers laced so tight they looked fused. The tarmac breeze tugged stray strands of her hair across tear-pink eyes. He steadied her carry-on and kept his gaze fixed on the jet's stairs, as though each step were a note in a fragile hymn only they could hear. Inside the cabin, window shades stayed half-drawn, casting thin slats of morning light across 2 faces that had aged a decade in a week. Hailey powered off her phone, letting unread messages from lawyers, stylists, even childhood friends chasing an angle, fade into black glass. Justin opened a well-worn Bible, thumbed past dog-eared psalms, then closed it again, realizing no verse could compress the chaos below into comfort. When the engines finally roared, their shoulders sagged in synchrony, not with relief, but with the weight of what leaving meant. They were no longer fleeing whispers, they were outrunning a roar. Outside the tiny oval window, Manhattan shrank to a grey chessboard, each block still echoing with questions they'd spend the rest of their lives answering in the quiet. History loves a scandal, but it never forgets a reckoning, and that's what Hailey's testimony has become. Once, Diddy's orbit felt too bright to eclipse. Platinum albums, sold-out vodka, yachts stocked with secrets and silence. Now the light has shifted, throwing long, accusing shadows across every invitation-only, after-party and non-disclosure clause that kept the music playing while others went missing. A single woman finally said, "I was there," and the world leaned in. Her husband whispered, "I was too," and the ground cracked open. Courts will wrangle over timelines and technicalities for months, maybe years, yet the verdict that matters has already landed in the court of public conscience. Power without accountability isn't power. It's an expiration date waiting to be stamped. Industry titans who once toasted beneath Diddy's rooftop fireworks now study their own backstories for buried sparks, wondering which forgotten night could ignite next. And for fans scrolling through the wreckage, the takeaway isn't just that empires fall, it's that they often teeter for ages until a voice strong enough, or simply brave enough, tips the balance. Hailey spoke, Justin echoed, and an entire ecosystem built on megawatts and murmurs learned how fragile it really is when silence finally costs more than truth. Sometimes the most unforgettable beat drops not on the radio, but in the hush that follows a confession the world can't unhear.